This episode is sponsored by Maxam. You're an incredibly smart, articulate man. You don't seem to have many limitations right now, Mo.
Skip that question.
Your voice is built for a podcast.
I hate my voice.
If you said you hate shisha, it sounds like you've been having shisha your whole life. There are very, very few people, if any, that have had your experiences, your life. Do you ever feel that where it's like, no one really gets me, or I'm kind of playing in my own...
You are so generous with that lovely comment. I am at awe with humans all the time. Are you kidding? There is so much to learn.
Had your son not passed away, you wouldn't be who you are now.
No, but Ali was very unusual. Had he not come to our life in the first place, I wouldn't be the person that I am.
So what is happiness for you?
Happiness is sold to us as part of the propaganda machine as an external effect.
Talk to me about how you see humanity in 2026.
The system we live by is over. And it doesn't matter where in society you reside, everything is about to be reset.
Are we losing our humanity with every passing year?
It doesn't take a genius to understand we've been colonized that wants to run every country in the world, including now Venezuela.
Today's guest is Mo Gawdat. Where do I even start with Mo? He's the current Chief AI Officer at FlightStory, the former Chief Business Officer of Google's Innovation Lab, a best-selling author of 4 different books, and has recorded over 300 guest episodes on his podcast, Slo-Mo. And I'm sure I'm missing out a whole bunch of stuff. Although all of this is incredibly impressive, it doesn't really give you the full measure of the man or what he's been through. Today we talk about the mindset of happiness in today's world. We also talk about what's really at stake for humanity versus machines. And most importantly, why the gravity of the battle means nothing to those at peace. This episode with Mo is an episode filled with insights, and one you need to watch.
Today's guest is Mo Gawdat, former Chief Business Officer at Google's Moonshot Factory, best-selling author of Solve for Happy and Scary Smart, and host of the Slo-Mo podcast. Now, as Chief AI Officer at FlightStory, he's turning his focus to AI, the future of humanity, and what comes next.
Mo, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Mo, it's surreal having you here.
Is it?
It is.
It's your home. It's lovely. So I'm happy to be
know
here.
that's what makes it even stranger, right?
Yeah.
You're someone who I've watched a lot. I've listened to a lot. I'm incredibly impressed by. And the fact that you're now sitting on my chair where I host not just, people on my podcast, but my friends, my family. It's all a bit surreal. So welcome to my home and welcome to the show. Really happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I like to start my questions with the mug. Why have you brought this mug today? What does it tell me about you? What's the story? What's the story about the mug? For those who are listening on audio, it's a plain white mug from what I can see.
Yeah. It's a plain white IKEA mug, I think. Interesting. I didn't understand why you asked for that, but I genuinely don't have a favorite mug, right? Okay. The idea is I like mugs that have a very specific shape. Yeah. Because coffee tastes different in them. Mm-hmm. And I genuinely have like 6 of those. So I don't know if this one...
Functional purpose.
It's not just functional. It's the idea that attachments weigh you down. Do you understand how that is? So if you love reading paper books, we all love paper books.
I still love the smell of paper books.
Yeah, and you're really attached to that. But you live a life like mine where you're traveling 200 days of the year. It's very difficult to that attachment tortures you. It doesn't serve you, right? You either have to carry a lot of weight with you every time you go through an airport, or you just have to give up on that. You have to crave that attachment and not be able to fulfill it, right? And in a very interesting way, this is just one example. In Solve for Happy, my first book, I wrote an Arabic fable, if you want, of that teacher that, gets visited by his students 20 years later. Everyone is telling their stories, and, he shows up with a tray and 3 mugs on it. There is a crystal mug, there is a clay, very cheap mug, and there is a silver mug, right? And he basically leaves the room and says, guys, just agree which one wants which mug, and I'll be back in a minute, right? And, they all go for the different mugs and, no, but I deserve this, but I've achieved that, but right? And, he comes back and says, what difference does it make? Just enjoy the coffee, right? Instead of all of the effort and all of the disappointment, if you want, that comes with attachment, if you just focus on the fact that this is all about the coffee, okay?
Mo, you've completely smashed my entire first question already. My whole concept of the mugs has gone. It's completely gone.
I don't mean to, but to me,
but it tells me about you.
Maybe my favorite mug is a simple, light way of going through life, attached only to the things that really matter.
And that's you. And the mug describes who you are. That's why I ask people to bring in the mug. That's your mug. You chose that for a reason, because you don't want that represents who you are.
Yeah,
light, easy, not necessarily wanting to attach.
I had a friend in my
That's why I'm stealing your mug, by the way. Before you get into that, that's why I'm going to steal your mug. I'm actually going to put it here. I'm going to put it on the Hall of Fame, just because every time I see it, I'm going to remember you.
I honestly, I'll get you 6 if you want. It's so simple. I had a friend over a couple of days back, and she pushed something over, and so I love Arabic coffee in the morning. And so one of the little Arabic coffee mugs fell and broke. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I said, I have 11 more. They're standard. They're white. They're simple. Arabic coffee comes in that little beautiful shape with a little bit of gold on top. Yes. Yeah, it looks amazing and it's lovely and it gives you joy. But
do you make the same cup of coffee every day, or do you like to mix it up? You mix it up. It has to be different. I saw your interview with Simon. You talked about coffee for a while. Simon Sinek.
I am very serious about coffee, I have to admit. I think coffee really... But because coffee to me is a form of meditation, a form of art, a form of introspection, believe it or not. So it takes me around 25 to 30 minutes before a cup of coffee is in my hand. Not because I'm following the healthy advice of no caffeine early on, but because I actually have to deeply reflect on my day, on how I feel when I woke up, and accordingly decide which coffee am I craving.
So let's talk about today. How are you reflecting today?
And I even though I didn't sleep enough, I slept only 6 hours yesterday. For the first time, I woke up feeling capable, if you want, and it's quite interesting because I was thinking in the morning that it's so interesting how we can be grumpy on a typical day, but once things go wrong, right, suddenly you realize, oh my God, that typical day is amazing, right? And today for me was that day where I'm waking up with no real load to carry, if you want, no sinus pain, no eyes a little blurry and watery and so on. I told you I cut my finger doing a bit of my carpentry, and this really matters to me, that in my mornings I write, I do some of my hobbies, and to be in your full health, that enables you to do that. In my heart is just podcasting. I podcast.
You've got close to 400 episodes.
384, yeah, and it was a very unusual show, I have to admit, because it was completely unprepared for. So I basically allowed myself, sometimes I invited friends, of course, people that I knew were going to say amazing things, but guests that I never met before, I prepared literally for 3 minutes before the podcast. I just knew how to introduce them. And basically what they achieved, or what they held dear. And interestingly, I watched 30 seconds of a video of them just to know, to have a feel for who they are as a person.
Get a vibe.
But then we got to know each other on the show, which I have to say was an blessing. And
it's a beautiful thing. I was going to ask you, how much have you learned from those 384 people?
Infinitely. But it wasn't just about the objective of Slo-Mo was that idea of finding gold nuggets in human experiences. And it's something that I have been blessed with so often in life. Even in my corporate career, I had 17,000 people reporting to me at a point in time. And for some strange reason, I think probably culturally, because of the way we're raised in the Islamic world, you owe all of them at least a nice greeting, right? And so many of them, if I meet today, I will have to recall their names. I mean, not all 17,000 have crossed my path, but thousands of them. right? I will remember, for the ones that I attended a meeting with, where they worked and what they worked on, and maybe what kind of family they had, and which department they worked in, and so on. And at first, I have to say, when I started to run big businesses, I felt that this was a very big burden, until I reframed it in my head in a very unusual way. I started to tell myself that if you cross paths with someone for half an hour, and they share with you a bit of their story, you've lived their life. They've summarized a bit of their story, which could have been 6 weeks, a year, 2 years of their life, in a tiny bit of a snippet of not just knowledge, but of knowledge, of inspiration, of emotions, of spirit. And so somehow I started to tell myself how blessed I was to be living so many lives.
Yeah.
And the podcast magnified that leaps and bounds, because I would spend a couple of hours with someone and literally I would live 4 of their most important experiences in life.
Yeah, you get an insight really into all aspects of their life.
Yeah.
So if I was to ask the 384 people, okay, to create a word cloud for how they would describe you, what would be the most prominent word that would come up with their experience when it comes to meeting someone like you?
I'm very curious. I'm generally very curious, but when I was podcasting, I had podcasts where I literally said 4 sentences, 2.5-hour podcasts, right? Because I genuinely was absorbing that life force that was coming from them. And it is, and then I got blamed for that, because, I also have the other side of being an author, and people want to hear my views and so on and so forth. And my producer at the time started to say that this is the most commonly asked request on the feed of our podcasts, that they want to hear from you. They're not here to attend the podcast. There are many podcasts. They want to hear most podcasts. And I have to admit, I frequently would forget, because I just get fascinated by this beautiful,
energy, soul,
and
story.
someone so generously wanting to open themselves up to me. I never did I know you don't either, but some podcasters are very good at the trick of getting their guests to cry on screen or whatever.
They pre-plan.
They fake and pre-plan, and they find the delicate one. And I would look at the same guests when they came on my podcast, and how honored and loved and hugged they were, and they shared the same story, but they shared it from a positive side. And I loved that idea. The idea of Slo-Mo in general was that, you and I probably share the same experience. I am so blessed to sit with some of the wisest people on the planet, and we'd be chatting over coffee, and that's how Slo-Mo started. We'd be chatting over coffee for an hour and a half.
The IKEA mug.
Yeah.
You see where it comes from?
Yeah.
Do you know why I bring the mug? I want my guests sometimes
to feel home,
to take a piece of home with them, so they feel comfortable. And also at the beginning of the podcast, when it's a bit awkward, when they start to talk about something that they brought with them, it just relaxes them.
I don't undermine the idea of the mug at all. It's that I don't live that way. And it's surprising, because I do have a favorite mug that was gifted to me by my daughter, but I don't drink in it.
Okay.
I have it on my
So
on
you
my
do
shelf,
have a favorite mug.
right? But it's not a mug to me. It's my daughter's gift.
But that's what all those mugs are.
Yeah.
Because they've
And
been
you
made
take
by...
them from people.
Well, they...
That's
I don't take them. I ask them. And they're like, would you like to? And at the end, I'll ask you as well if you want me to take your mug. And you say yes or no. And if they...
mine
By the way, there's a lot of people that haven't. They haven't consented to it. Some gave me a loan. They said, okay, I'll loan it to you for 1 year, but I'll come back. I said, it's up to you. But the idea very much is being that when I look at them, it makes me feel a bit enriched. I know what the answer is going to be anyway, but I have to ask you anyway. In my show, I always ask also for a safe word. If there's a question my guest does not want to answer, right? Yeah. And I don't want to go dig too deep.
One word
otherwise,
or a small sentence?
It can be anything that you like.
Yeah.
I've had the most weird stuff, so go for it.
Yeah, I'll just say, can I please skip that?
Can I please skip that? Great.
That counts as a safe word.
That sounds
take
fantastic.
me on face value. If I say, can I please skip that?
I've got the white mug, and let's skip that. Mo, I'm getting a lot of empathy from you. It's okay. Talk to me about how you see humanity in 2026.
So I woke up 3 4 Sundays ago with an overwhelming thought of what's happening in the world. And I, when I get woken up at 4:11, I sort of told myself over the years since my son left that this is sort of an assignment, a message of some sort. And I've been attempting to understand what's going on in the world for the last 2.5 years now.
Just 2.5 years?
Yeah, since October 7th. Understand, before that, publicly, you can find lots of my podcasts that basically said, I never watch the news, ever. I'm not even interested, okay? And I still don't watch the news. This is all crap. I mean, you worked in communication and you know the amount of lies that are in propaganda, but
It's a good name for a book, that.
Yeah, I'm working on a book called Propaganda as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, I started this new series that I call Shorts. So my typical book is like 370 pages or so. Those are going to be 120 pages. I don't even know if I'll publish them or just put them online for free. And they are literally part of my struggle in life. It's part of what I'm trying to figure out. And so when I start writing them, I'm not an expert at them at all. It's the opposite. I'm very curious about them. And then I'm giving myself the target of writing them in 3 weeks each. So it's a very raw bit of work. And unfortunately, it seems to me that the world is, in my mind, 2026 will go in one of two ways. Either you'll get a breather because those in power have really exhausted us over the last 5 years before the big slam. Or you may not even get the breather. But either way, I think we're heading in the direction of a challenging time for humanity.
Are we losing our humanity with every passing year?
I would probably think the opposite. I think we are waking up for the first time in my lifetime. I think, no, let's try to be accurate. I think some of us are waking up.
I had Ricardo Kadam in that chair
a
couple of seasons ago, and he gave me exactly the same answer. And he said, waking up. He said the same word. We're waking up.
I think we are.
So why is it? Why are we waking up now? What is all the conflicts of events that's happened made us all of a sudden start to be more aware and to wake up?
How political is this podcast?
This is not political. This is a privately funded, independent podcast where
how political do you allow me to go?
I allow you to talk about whatever you want to talk about, provided you don't insult one individual person, perhaps, or slander them. You can insult anyone you like that deserves it.
Netanyahu?
You can insult Netanyahu.
Good, yeah. So put it this way. A lot of what you know about the world has been fed into your head by a very deliberate plot. Okay?
Going back hundreds of years. Not even recently.
I'd probably say going back hundreds of years is accurate, since 8th century BC to be specific. But really aligned and streamlined around 140, 150 years ago. And that plot is moving in a direction where the world needs to get into a lot of chaos to enable us to justify actions that wouldn't be justified otherwise. Sadly, in the direction of another major war. And
it's a necessity in order for us to move forward.
No, it's a necessity in order for us to be wiped out and for others to move forward.
And who are the others?
Those in charge. So think of it this way. You are heading into a place in the progress of humanity where what has enabled us to build civilization so far, which is a tiny element of capitalism that's known as labor arbitrage, is about to end. Okay, so we lived so far in a world where you and I had value because we could be utilized as a gear in a machine that made someone more money than they paid us. With AI becoming what AI is becoming, sooner or later the signs are all over the wall, but the person who's not inside the lab still thinks it's not that great. Okay, they still think it's ChatGPT. It's not ChatGPT. They still think that agents are not yet capable of doing real work, which is true, but that's because they are 2 years old, right? They still think that robotics are a few light years away. None of that is true, right? And there will be massive disruption in labor dynamics, in my view, definitely before the 2030s, right? And so if you think of that as an underlying factor of humanity in the next 10 years, that would lead to humanity becoming a liability.
But you mentioned waking up, right? We're waking up. So if you're waking up, it means you've been asleep. Okay?
Yes, you've been lied to.
So you've been lied to.
Yeah, you've been lied to believe that that everything was just okay, so you don't really need to worry about it.
I think I know what we're talking about. Just to be really clear, we're talking about indoctrinating a thinking, an approach that you have to live your life to conformity, to effectively be controlled. It's about being controlled.
It's not about being controlled as much as being utilized in labor arbitrage, right? So people who are take a very contentious topic of women in the workforce, right? And the whole idea of feminism and empowerment of women and so on, which I am a huge believer in, but not for the reasons it was instituted, right? So you have to imagine that it was 1944, the war is ending. While the soldiers were away fighting, women were back home. Running the factories, running the country, and so on and so forth. And then, if you remember, let's use advertising and communication. If you remember the 1950s, it was all about advertising was all about a woman in an apron and the picket fences and and the nuclear family, if you want. And that was what was being advertised as the men came back and to America, let's say, and every part of the economy is prospering. Factories are now making washing machines and toasters instead of tanks. But then as that continues to grow and capitalism continues to deliver, they continue to need more and more people in the workforce because of advertising. Because they managed to invent, in my last book, I called it the invention of more, right? They managed to convince you that one car is not enough, that they managed to convince you that you need several TVs. They managed to convince you that you need more and more and more and more. And
what is television? It's telling a vision. It's telling a story.
100%.
But this goes back again to my idea, my belief of control, that we are in a controlled state. There's a rule of the few. They're controlling the government. Their governments are enacting the wishes of that few, and we, the workforce, not the think force, the workforce, have been lied to, manipulated, controlled for at least 100 years, right? At least. 100 years. So that's my sentiment. So when you're saying a waking up, I'm with you on the waking up, but it's just about what are we waking up from, and also what role is AI going to play in that wake up? Is it speeding that waking up, or is it actually going to force us to look more inward?
We're waking up because we're finally allowed to disagree. So you are about to hit an economic reality, and I'm talking the U.S., which is the focus of my research. You're about to hit an economic reality where a lot of people will have a lot to be disgruntled about. Okay, and there will be many reasons for what many of the experts, including some of the most prominent economists, some of the most prominent political commentators, that basically say there is a risk of civil war in the U.S. Right? And if you were to let people come together, they'd probably request changes from this government. Okay. In order to not let them come together, you want to get them to disagree, right? So you selectively release a lot of the information that has been hidden from people for a while, so that now they have something new to talk about.
Well, we're seeing more and more people like Candace Owens, Tucker
So you get the
Carlson.
Candaces and the Tuckers and so on.
Even Charlie Kirk, was he one of those before he was assassinated?
Yeah, it seems so, but you can't judge that because he was early in that conversion, if you want. But the point is this: the point is when you look at some of the work of someone like Tucker, for example, you have to ask yourself: is Tucker really turning things around, or is he just releasing a pressure valve? Okay, is he in all of the investigation he did on 9/11 to conclude eventually that U.S. National security must have been aware? Is that a conclusion that needs 4 episodes and all of the build-up, Tucker, or are you sort of giving us something to to just chat about and release the pressure inside the pressure cooker? In 2024, 2025 specifically, a lot of people started to realize that what they've been told was not true. What they've been told about us here in the Middle East was not true. What they've been told about who the perpetrator is not true. What they've been told about what their money was going for.
You're talking about Palestine and Israel.
I'm talking about
Let's
Palestine
be clear,
and Israel.
because you started talking about Netanyahu, then we didn't talk about Netanyahu. So let's bring it back.
But Palestine and Israel is a small part of a very big plot. And America is not separate from that in any possible way.
No, they're ingrained in it.
Yeah. And so the idea is to understand that we are now starting to recognize things. And you have to ask yourself, are people capable of seeing the atrocities that were happening in Palestine in 4K? Because that's a failure of the Zionist propaganda machine? Do you really believe that? I mean, they own the propaganda machine. You have to imagine that this is allowed. Okay? As a matter of fact, it's encouraged. Right? So the trick here is you're going to get more and more peaks into reality. Okay? But those peaks are going to be scattered and they're going to be conflicting. Okay? And they're going to be distracting and they're going to be uncomfortable. And they're going to be attacked by humans and chatbots. And they're going to be, discussed in ways that are not super friendly. And I think the trick here is that humanity being, when I said some of us are waking up, all of us are being informed. But to wake up, you have to see a new reality. Okay?
And that starts from within?
That starts from an openness to sense of patience before you make conclusions. Okay? So if you understand that everything you're being told is 2 lies away, not 1 lie away. So they lie and then they lie about their lie. And then accordingly, you start to say to yourself, you see, I was right, they were lying. But what you're now being told is also a lie. Okay? When you start to look at tiny bits of the elephant, this is a trunk and this is a leg and so on, you're still confused. You're informed, but you're still confused. And the idea to question here is you only are awake when you suddenly realize that, okay, all of that was the dream and here is reality. A bit like the Matrix, if you want, right? If you've seen the movie, there is no part of the Matrix that goes with them beyond the Matrix, right? It's scruffy back there. It's not pleasant. It's cold. It's dark. The food is slimy. It's, reality is not that pretty as a result of all of those years that we've lived in that are, manufactured.
Brainwashed. It's brainwashed.
Yeah.
Going back to the original question, how do you see humanity in 2026?
I think for those of us who are curious, we're going to learn a lot more. For those of us who are curious, we're going to be able to share a lot more, and we're going to be able to put things together a little more cleverly, if you want. For most of the rest, I think there will be a lot of debate and a lot of argument and a lot of rudeness and a lot of stupid comments and a lot of divide.
Yeah.
Okay. As I said, on the political front and the events front, I don't know if we're going to get a breather for a year or if it's going to continue. But either way, 27 is not going to be great.
That the whole aspect is you don't want to believe anymore. What is truth? And AI now has really complicated that even further.
Not true at all. I think AI is actually empowering us very, very strongly.
Okay, so if we've been lied to, right, for the longest time, we've been trying to search for the truth now. You now add in a technology layer or an AI layer that makes it even harder to detect from a picture or from a video, whatever the case is, what is true or not. It means that you have another layer which you need to go and investigate further.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the truth is actually harder to get to.
The truth was never found at the shallow top level ever.
You used to always say a picture never lies. Remember that phrase? That's long gone.
That's long gone, but
Yeah.
but a picture never tells the whole truth either. So a lot of analytical people will tell you, in my second book, That Little Voice in Your Head, I have this beautiful, because I'm also an artist, so I illustrate and so on.
Yeah.
I have this beautiful illustration of a situation on a specific page, which you look at and you believe that it's something. And, I ask you questions and you engage and you say, yes, we should save the child and we should do this and the car is coming and da. And then I zoom out and I give you a different perspective of that picture, and it is actually completely different than what you thought. And it's the whole idea is that to be able to actually understand, you need a lot more nuance to every piece of knowledge that we have been trained to give up on, right? We've been trained to ask a question and get an answer from the 6 o'clock news in the past, or from
a book,
or from a book, or from an expert, or someone that appears on TV and actually has a jacket, like, oh my God, he must know what he's talking about, right? And somehow that paused our thinking. Like we're not going to have to think for ourselves anymore. AI gives you, for the curious ones, the opposite of that, right? So what I do is I start in one engine, and I never, search a silly search. I'm always in deep think or deep search format. Right, and I would ask a very, very well articulated question, say to Gemini, right, and then Gemini will give me an answer, and I'll copy that and I'll put it in DeepSeek and say what's missing there. So Gemini is American, DeepSeek is Chinese, so DeepSeek will immediately answer and say, oh no, this is very American.
So what has AI taught you, Mo?
I suddenly have somehow renewed a lease on life, if you want.
What does that mean?
I have to admit, I was approaching my intelligence limits. I've put every bit of
a 155 IQ, you mean, or?
I don't know if I'm 155, actually. I've never measured me. But
You've got to be close to that if you're not.
I've never been measured, but I think I'm reasonably okay. I'm probably...
You paint, you sculpt, probably. You're a carpenter.
Yeah.
You're a coder. You're an author. You're a podcaster. You're an incredibly smart, articulate man. Like, you don't seem to have many limitations right now.
Skip that question? No, it is. Look, it's so the things. Lots of things that. I'll give you a very good example. When I was a child, I asked for a piano, right? And my parents were very empowering, so they got me a piano, and I almost broke the wall because of how frustrated I was, right?
You punched the wall.
I punched the wall, right? And then 3 weeks later, I said, okay, I got that wrong. Can I have a guitar, right?
Okay.
And then being those incredibly empowering parents, that they allowed me to get a guitar. They asked me to save a tiny bit of it, and then I played really well. Right, and I think that
it's not helping me feel any better about myself right now. You're literally the Renaissance man. You know the Renaissance man.
No, I am.
I feel like you're that level.
I'll tell you what I am genuinely, and I say that while you pressure me. I don't watch football. I don't go out and smoke shisha for 3 hours a day. I'm highly efficient. Okay, and I find joy in doing things that most people think of as work, and I find very little joy in lots of things that people call entertainment, right? And so as a result, I don't know how to say that any other way. I used to teach my young employees about one habit I did when I graduated. So when I graduated, I was still very athletic. I played handball for the national team and so on. And then I got badly injured. But until I got badly injured, I used to work out at least an hour a day, right? And then I suddenly, when I finished university, because I love learning, I suddenly had no new supply of knowledge at all. And so I told myself, I'm going to also invest in the health of my brain an hour a day, right? And when you really think about it, an hour a day at my age now,
How old are you?
I'm 58,
Okay.
is at least 14,000 hours, right? And when you really think about it, of course, it was never an hour a day. It was sometimes an hour. Now I do 4 hours a day, almost 4 days a week. And it is quite interesting that we are the resultant, if you want, of all those hours put in. Okay, and you have to be armed with a couple of things. You have to be armed with one side that has a conviction of what you're good at and a humbleness of what you're stupid at, so that you don't become stubborn.
Yeah.
Right. So you try something, and then if you know that you're not progressing in it because it's not your thing, you don't keep trying and wasting your cycles in it. But if you know that it is your thing, but you need hours, right, you keep going. But then the other is a very interesting commitment to habits, not results. I don't know if I can explain that clearly. So I have a tendency to create massive projects when I do any of my handcrafts. Projects that I know by definition would take 3 weeks or 3 months of work. But I don't measure them as projects. I basically have a space where I can store all of the progress, right?
Yeah.
And I just keep working at them very quietly, very calmly, at the exact correct speed, not too fast, not too slow, until they're finally done, right? Now, if you think of yourself that way, I told you I also restore classic cars, for example. That's a great example of that, because classic cars are not just the typical put the computer on the engine, you'll find out what's wrong, order the spare part, and you're done. Post 2005, these were how cars are. Classics, you have to really tinker with it. You have to sit next to it. You have to ask others. You have to consult the manual. You have to remove it off the ramp and stay for a while, and then and it's all that idea of, it doesn't matter how long it will take. If I continue to work at it, this car will go back to brand new.
Yes.
Similarly, we humans, it doesn't matter how long it takes. If you continue to work at you'll be very good at something.
Very
right?
true.
The challenge for most humans, unfortunately, is we don't put in the hours, right? We put a lot of the hours, chatting with our friends or texting on Instagram or...
So what is happiness for you? And has that shifted over time and how you define it? Because I know about your methodology and mathematical kind of equation, but have you seen nuances that suggest that can actually be changed depending on the person, the context, if you're suffering atrocities from the external world, if you're going through hardship internally? Does the data inputs keep changing and redefining how you define what happiness is in 2026?
So again, interestingly, because of communication and advertising, happiness is sold to us as part of the propaganda machine as an external effect that triggers a feel-good reaction within us that we call happiness, right?
Two brands come to mind, McDonald's and Coca-Cola.
I was just going to say Coca-Cola, right? Somehow we can associate the original Coke had like 3.5 grams of cocaine in them. So you might as well understand why that made you feel a little more energized. But then afterwards, they replaced that with,
something synthetic and God knows.
Yeah, beautiful girl in bikini, dancing on the beach.
I meant the product, not the commercial. I meant the product that replaced
the product has a bit of caffeine, has a bit of sugar in it, but it's not much different if you think about it than a very sweet tea that the Egyptian blue collar worker had when they painted your walls, right? Now the thing is, you somehow tell humanity that if you manage to hold that red can in your hand and it has a few dribbles of cold condensated vapor on it, then you're going to achieve happiness, right? And for so many of us, we start chasing those promises, and we chase those promises because they do trigger a tiny little feel-good impact.
Dopamine, isn't it?
Which is dopamine, right? So what you normally get from everything that comes from outside you, other than a hug, which gives you oxytocin, or stress.
Are you a hugger? You look like a hugger.
I'm a serious hugger, yeah.
We're going to hug after this.
We can hug now. So the thing is that we start chasing dopamine,
Yeah.
and dopamine is a replacement of happiness, if you want. And so for most people, that feel good, that idea of I feel rewarded, I feel surprised, I feel excited, I feel awe, I feel pleasure, right? I feel achievement, and we associate them with stock videos. You can find those on online, and you pay 60 cents and you get the guy. Yeah, that is the I signed the deal sign. And somehow humans are so stupid that when they do sign the deal, they do the same movement. It's like reality TV, really. It's like I've become a copy of that
Well, look
person.
at the Nike swoosh. It's a tick.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And in an interesting way, what happens is by replacing happiness with dopamine, with reward, what ends up happening is you do get a feel-good sensation, but you get a very fleeting feel-good sensation that you have to renew over and over and over and over. And dopamine has a trick to it, which is your brain down regulates to the amount of the dopamine in your blood. So if just hypothetically, if it takes you 1 unit of dopamine to feel great about something, okay, the next time that thing happens, you need 1.1 units to feel
It's a
good,
drug, just like
right?
drugs.
It's a drug. It literally is addictive. Now, the alternative, which is something that you can't be sold, is to not want that drug at all, to feel absolutely okay with whatever is happening in your life right now.
Calmness, stillness.
It's calm, it's contentment, it's peace, okay? And it is a very interesting thing, because that's the feeling you get when you're like, I love this moment. I want this moment to last, right? I want this moment to last is how I define happiness, okay? It's a moment that basically is the result of a very interesting equation where your brain, which is a survival machine, it compares the events of your life, or at least its perception of the events of your life, to its expectations, to its hopes and beliefs of how life should be, right? If it rains and, I want to water my plants, then the comparison is rain is what I want. I got rain, I'm happy.
Yes.
Right? If I get stuck in traffic on the way here, and I need to be here on time because we said we're going to chat a bit before we start filming, that's not what I want, and I actually feel very unhappy. But if I was on a phone call and I needed that phone call to finish and it was taking 5 minutes more, a tiny bit of traffic is not a bad idea, right? And so it's always a comparison between what you want and what life actually gives you. And if life meets your expectations, you're happy, you're calm and peaceful and contented, for a very, again, biological design reason, right? So basically what your brain says is, I scanned the world around me, okay? It's actually quite safe. You can now sit, rest and digest and, replenish your muscles and reflect and close your eyes and sleep, okay? Which is very valuable for survival. Now, you can summarize that in an equation, as most people who are aware of my work will tell you. Your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should be.
How has life met your expectations or not?
Life has beat my expectations tremendously all the time. But you have to be realistic about what life is. Like I was telling you, I had 10 days of very painful flu. Now, you take that situation and ask yourself, am I happy about the flu? Am I happy about the visit? Am I happy about what's realistic?
The reality is you're only sick for a very finite period of your life.
100%.
So
And
you may be sick for 10 days out of 365. So when you look at it from that perspective,
there you go. And then suddenly you start to see life in a proper perspective. So the idea is, hey, by the way, someone like me who's as stressed as I am with my travel, who is going at this age, who is right, is you're expected to actually catch the flu. You should have done something preemptively about that, right? So there is nothing that misses my expectations there. Of course, there is the pain, there are the aches, there is the mounting work that I had to catch up about over the last few days. But then at the same time, there is the ability to sit and finish my book. There is the reality of I did go and I really enjoyed it. There is this, there is that.
So Mo, look, before we get to, because I want to get to these questions, okay, and they're specific to you. Before we get there, do you get lonely in the sense of There are very, very few people, if any, that have had your experiences, your life, and who potentially even thinks the way that you do. Yeah. So when you're conversing with someone else, how much of a letdown is that sometimes, based on not necessarily your expectation of them, but the fact that they are not necessarily at the same level of you or the same level of experience.
You're kidding.
So I want to understand from your perspective.
First of all,
do you ever feel that where it's like no one really gets me, or I'm kind of playing in my own?
You are so generous with that lovely comment. I am at awe with humans all the time. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? There is so much to learn. There is so much to learn. I told you when we started, I'm good at certain things that I've dedicated a lot of cycles to, okay? But I've dedicated a lot of cycles to very few things, right? And to
So you don't feel that loneliness?
Not at all.
When you're having an intellectual conversation with someone who hasn't had also the life experiences that you've had, or
they
written
had
the
different
books.
life experiences.
They've had different ones, I know, but it's like, because, we're born into this world, right, alone. Typically, we live most of our life with other people. They come in and out, but we always go, when we put our head on our pillow, it's still ourselves. So when you're sitting there, do you look for books? Do you look for that learning, that curiosity to help fill a void, because maybe other people can't give you that?
I do all the time. I mean, it is actually quite addictive for me, because after a while, as I told you, I do 4 hours a day of learning, right? And I don't do them doing other things. I'm not the kind of guy that will listen to a podcast while driving, right? I will actually sit down and call it learning time and start my clock. And I'm very good at those things, right? And literally sit down and learn about a specific topic. But that's the tiniest amount of learning, is the learning you get in your head, right? I have a friend of mine who's a Californian who just moved to Dubai, who sees the world from a Californian point of view very, 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 very different than ours, right? Over here in the world, who glorifies America and everything that America does, but at the same time is willing to understand that America is a bully, and that is, humanitarian.
They can coexist.
Yeah, and in a very interesting way, almost every single time we chat, it's a bloodbath. It's like, are you freaking kidding me? Is that what you actually believe about life? And, it goes both ways, right? But that is learning, right? That idea of, oh my God, there is that completely different
perspective, opinion, approach,
right?
yeah.
And to be given the gift of sitting with someone who's lived a different life, okay?
And isn't that the definition of humanity?
It is.
Isn't that the very definition of humanity?
It's the definition of the non-physical side of humanity. So if you really genuinely understand who we are as this, okay, you're a physical form that's animated by a non-physical being, okay, and that non-physical being, call it your soul if you're religious, call it your consciousness if you're not, whatever you want. That non-physical being is not part of space-time. Okay, so it's not governed by space-time, it's not bothered by space-time, right? And it is connected to every other consciousness, every other soul outside space-time. And it's quite interesting when you start to see it this way, because in a very interesting way, the language, of course, that those souls speak is love. It's the only language they understand, which basically is the language of the divine. And a lot of the spiritual teachings will tell you that the divine created gravity, if you want, in this world to bring objects together, but created love in the spiritual world to bring all of those souls back to their source, to each other, right? And if you genuinely allow yourself to go beyond this and beyond the ego of, oh, look at this is better than that. Oh, look at this has seen more than that. Or look at this has more money than that. Or look at this is male and that's female, or this is female and that's male, and one is better than the other. And all of that stupidity that they put in, right? And just genuinely say, oh my God, here's a new soul that had a beautiful path through life, that mathematically, whatever I do, I would never be able to be like them.
So is life more art or science? And don't say both. It is both.
Are they any different?
Well, you tell me. You're the expert in this subject.
So art is
art. I see is more. It's things that science can't prove yet.
Correct. It's an expression of what you feel is true, but can't prove with science.
Like you can't prove God, potentially. Unilaterally.
You can definitely not prove God.
But the
But
faith,
you can
the
prove
belief.
the probability of God.
Yeah, so the faith, so that's that leap, right? And so is life more art or science?
The challenge we have in this world is that, believe it or not, everything that has impacted our world negatively in terms of our well-being is a doctrine. Okay, whether it's an unrealistic or uninformed understanding of a religion, or whether it is an unrealistic or an unacceptable understanding of the role of science, right? Or whether it's an attachment to one element of what makes you who you are.
Yeah.
You know, your heart, but not your mind and your body and your soul, or your soul, but you're not your heart and your body and your mind, and so on. And all of those corners that we put ourselves in require balance for life to operate. It requires you to get the rest of it seen. And we have, again, because of capitalism, interestingly, where we started the conversation, we have turned the value, the worth of a human into the productivity of what they bring to the world.
A battery.
Yeah, and accordingly, it's all about doing. And doing is a state of the
Well,
masculine.
Rothschild famously said he doesn't want a nation of thinkers. He wants a nation of workers.
Yeah,
That was in the turn of the century.
and
That's the person who created the educational system of today.
correct. And you have to imagine why that is. Because once again, thinkers should be limited in number, and doers, cogs.
The people that who want to ask the questions, you can never satisfy them. They're always going to be wanting to find out more, to dig a little bit deeper. You can't control that. That's innate. In my opinion, that's innate. That's something that you're born with, and you just want to always find out what's behind door number 2. I want to find out what's door number 3, and keep on going. The conspiracy theorists are an example of that. That's why they've been made to look ridiculous by Western media, because they're saying X, Y, and Z. They may actually all be true, but when you say the terminology, "Oh, you are a conspiracy theorist," that's a negative thing. In my opinion, it's a good thing, because you're actually wanting to challenge. Correct. You're actually wanting to think. So I'll repeat what I said. You cannot control people who are thinking because they're curious. You can control people who just want to get stuff done.
Yeah.
That
I
makes
agree.
sense? Right, you're taking control of the show. You're a podcaster. In here, there are 6 golf balls, right?
Okay.
With questions on them, right? Read one out loud so the people who can listen and watch can know what the question is. You know the AI that picks up when you call support? The one that mishears you, loops you back to the menu, and clearly has no idea what you said, especially in Arabic? Maxam built the opposite. Arabic-first agents that actually understand the dialect, reason through the problem, and bring in a human the moment it matters. Not scripted, not reactive, agentic. Then they surface the analytics that show you what happened, what worked, and what to fix. The first generation could talk. This one thinks. Maxam.com.
What teaches us more about being alive, the joy of birth or the pain of loss?
So this is obviously, there's a reference to yourself.
They're one contract. So one of the things that most people forget is the zero-sum nature of reality. Okay, everything. So you come to this life with zero. You don't have a dime in your pocket when you're born. You don't have a letter of experience when you're born. You don't have the ability to do anything, and you acquire, and interestingly, you leave with zero, right? And so a zero-sum game means that everything you gain goes away, right? And so at the top level, we differentiate between the gift and the loss, okay? In the depths of the understanding, they are one and the same. You can never lose unless you're gifted. Do you see that? And so, yes, of course, some of us, unfortunately, only learn from loss, because loss stops us in our tracks.
This isn't about learning. This is about feeling alive. So and it's about the joy of birth. Birth doesn't have to be being born. It can be mentally reborn. It could be spiritually being reborn. So what teaches you to be more alive? having that joy of birth, whatever that looks like.
I think what teaches you to be more alive is whichever triggers within you an awareness that you're alive, believe it or not.
In your case?
I have been, it's interesting because to me, this year is what I call the 50% year.
Okay, what does that mean?
So this is a year where I will give 50% of the year to living, which has never happened for me before. Understand, I've achieved quite a bit of what I set out to achieve, and a little more, I have to admit. And being meticulous around my mission has made me like everyone, completely absorbed and unaware of the reality of, where is living.
So you said 50% of this year will be dedicated towards living. What do you mean by living?
So I'm gonna dedicate 50%, one of every 2 days.
To do what?
To doing something, one of the top 10 things I love to do.
Which is?
Carpentry, pottery, gardening.
So it's doing things that you love. That's your definition of living?
That's my definition of not working.
Okay.
And when you're not working, you're living.
Okay.
Okay. No, when you're working, you're not living. Let's be very accurate on that. So basically, the idea of doing in general, doing is not a state of being. Being is a state where you are contented with yourself within yourself. Okay. And that does not require you to be on a beach somewhere, believe it or not. It doesn't require.
Are you a beach person?
I'm completely indifferent, believe it or not.
I do believe it completely.
I love nature for sure, but I love nature in my tiny little desert rose that I just keep cutting and and pruning and so on. And to me it's that idea of not being drawn into the constant doing that enables you to live. Now, does that happen with birth? For some of us who are lucky enough to recognize that early on, yes, that happens with birth. Does loss stop you in your tracks and makes you question if you should live more? Yeah, loss stopped me in my tracks, but made me question if I should work more. Yeah.
Mo, do you know how many people love you? Do you have any? Do you know what? I was at a dinner a couple of days ago, and I said I had a couple. I shoot typically 2 or 3 guests per day. Okay. And I told them who my guests were. And when I mentioned your name, everyone on the table wanted me to ask you this. Or the thing is, it's very difficult to ask you a question because you have your own story and narrative. And I have to find... No, but it's beautiful because I have to then find the right segue to talking about something that I really want to get the answers to. But the bigger point is that the way you speak and how you see the world, it touches so many people in a positive way that everyone that I have met, and I've mentioned your name, they speak incredibly positively. So the impact that you've had, now yes, you've got the whole 1 billion people that you want to make happy, and I know you have a mathematical formula, but I'll tell you this for nothing. Whoever I mention your name to, if they know you, it's always positive. That ripple effect is extraordinary. So that tells me that how you're living your life, however it's carpentry or going on whatever it is, it's about the impact you give people, because otherwise what can people learn from you? You want to learn from other people, they will also want to learn from you.
I really, really don't want to change your mind on this, but that's not what I feel. So I'll tell you openly, I cry constantly about the amount of love that's poured on me. It's just, I don't think it's because of anything I do.
It's what you make people feel. It's how you give hope, how you give clarity.
You're assuming that I am this smart guy that knows exactly how to tell people what to do, and then as a result, I make a difference to their life. Right? You're not questioning what made me the person that I am. Right? Which had very little to do with me. People forget this, okay? This entire thing, my upbringing, all of the little twists that happened when I was young, my slightly autistic brain at the beginning that really favored mathematics and physics and gave me a very unusual view of life. I've done nothing to earn this. Do you understand this?
Yes and no.
I've done nothing.
You're being a bit too hard on yourself.
I've done nothing to earn this. Trust me. If I was born to a slightly different mother, you would have never heard of me. Right? Now, here's the interesting thing. I was asked 2019, a couple of months before COVID, by a friend of mine on a big stage. I was in the Netherlands, and I, I attended the event since the morning, and it was like a couple of thousand people event, and I was speaking at 2:00 or something. So I had probably 100 to 1,000 hugs before I got on stage. And then he asks me, I don't remember the question, and I find myself bursting in tears on stage. Because if you know my story, of course, when Ali left, Ali and Aya are the biggest love of my life, right? My daughter and my son. And then Ali had this very unusually immersive form of love. He takes you in, right? And I have to admit to you, nothing could ever replace that love. So I have this tendency to believe that God, being generous as he is, after Ali left, he replaced it with the love of thousands of people. Okay? Because that's, to me, the only way that it could feel the same, if you want. Right? Now, you may think of this in terms of chronological orders and tell yourself, but then you started to do this and you assigned yourself 1 billion happy and you did this and then that happened and then you spoke on this.
No, it's not linear.
It's not.
It's not linear.
Right. You have to think of life. If your soul and my soul are not part of space-time, which they're not, I can prove that to you with physics, then events are not chronological, they're causal. Do you understand that? So you could tell yourself, I did all of that so that people love me. That's chronological. Or you could tell yourself that there was a decision made for people to pour love on me. And for that, I had to behave a certain way. The cause comes first. And then time is irrelevant. Okay? And I have to admit to you, I've never expected that. Never expected that.
And that's probably why you deserve it.
You're very, very, very kind. But I say that with lots of tears today, because I was in an event yesterday, and once again, I just don't get it. Like, people are so generous to me, right? And I'm trying. I'm doing something, okay? And that thing, I can guarantee you, is not to make money or to be famous or to I don't give a shit. Okay.
I know.
As a matter of fact, if I get a choice, I would probably choose to disappear somewhere and do my carpentry and car restorations. And this is what gives me this, that alone time is where I belong.
Do you feel you're not deserving?
I don't think
the love, of the adoration.
I think love is the default setting between all souls. That every soul is lovable. It's just that we act in ways that trump that. So
you said to me, you don't understand why people are saying these
No,
things.
I understand why some people would say that, because maybe they read the book and it made a difference. But to be at that scale is just...
What is scale? It's just amplifying a message. That's all it is. Just getting a bit bigger speakerphone. You've got a podcast, you've got more books. Of course you're going to reach more people. And because of that, you're going to have more likes, more engagement, more love. That's cause and effect.
It could be. I'm very, very grateful. That's all I can say. I'm very grateful. And I have to say, I love everyone back as much. As a matter of fact, it's overwhelming.
So your belief is that had your son not passed away when he was 2014, right?
2014, yeah.
Had that not happened, you wouldn't be who you are now.
100%.
So that's a fundamental belief that you have. Are there any other beliefs that you link to your son's passing?
Had he not come to our life in the first place, I wouldn't be the person that I am.
So even before?
100%. The way he taught me, the way he shared, he was a very unusual soul.
I mean, he gets it from his dad. You're not the most... I've never met someone like you, Mo, I have to tell you.
No, but Ali was very unusual. I mean, at a very, very young age. And he was that kind of person that would... he didn't speak much at all.
What would he say about you? as a
I
dad?
think he'd be very happy.
As a dad, how would you describe you as a dad?
We were very close. I mean, I always tell that story that he somehow always gave me the positioning that I needed, right? So he always would look up to me as a father. And we played video games together, we chatted together, we read very complex books together, and, listened to music together and played music together. And when he was 16, 15 maybe, I traveled a lot. And so I was away for a couple of weeks, and I come back, and Ali, gets up to hug me. And for the first time, he is taller than me, right? And you notice it. There's always that moment in your relationship.
I haven't quite got there yet. My sons are too young.
It's a very monumental moment. And so I'm like, oh my God. I used to joke about him and call him Shorty. And so I was like, oh my God, Shorty, you're taller than me. And he was like, yeah, fat hobbit. And since then, he would call me Fat Hobbit. Now, I love that for so many reasons. One, that he feels safe to do that with me. But it was a positioning statement. Did you understand that? How wise that boy was. He was basically saying, I'm now shifting to being an equal that can actually have that conversation with you. And the level of conversation that started to happen afterwards was just so deep. He was so philosophical. He was so, I would probably say he was the founder of the mission, if you want, okay? Because of the way he emotionally was. I was very driven. I mean, you would not recognize me in my Google years, right? I was a very successful businessman, serious mathematician, very serious geek.
I mean, you were coding in '96.
I still am coding now, but I code all the time, and it's again, you may think of this as a gift. Okay, it's a bias, it's a brain bias. There are things that I do really well.
Can I just quickly ask about your daughter? Because in the story that it's very well documented that this is all of this came about after 2014 and the mission that you had. Your daughter lost a brother.
Yeah.
And she's now seen her father sort of, if you like, not just take the memory of Ali, but sort of run with it. How strong a person does she need to be to not only lose her brother, but to see her father dedicate his life to amplifying Ali's type of message?
I'm not dedicating my life to this. I'm triggered by Ali's loss. To amplify both of their message. If you read my books and you do a word count, there's always more mention of Aya than Ali, right? So they taught me in two very different ways, okay? And in a very unusual way, they taught me in almost two opposite ways, okay? Aya is life itself. Genuinely, she is life itself. She's the life force, which is very analogous to the reality that she's very feminine, okay? And all her life, she was very feminine. And I'm a geek. So what was I missing most? I mean, I'm very feminine within me, but I allowed only the masculine side of me to show, okay? And I remember vividly the time Aya must have been... So just to answer your question first, Aya was the one that was tested hardest by losing Ali. Why? Because Ali was so masculine that he became the masculine figure of the house, right? I was always traveling. I was focused on my business. I was chief business officer of Google at the time, Google X. And so I was prioritizing life, if you want, the nuances of making money, okay? And so Ali took over. And so Aya's brother became not only her brother, but her brother, her best friend, and the masculine figure. And I only figured that out, believe it or not, 4.5 months after he left. I just couldn't. She was in a very bad relationship. And, I somehow suddenly it hit me that, oh my God, right? Things are no longer the same because there is no masculine figure in her life, okay? And I did my most devious plan ever, and probably what I'm proudest of in my life, was I used to work in California at the time, and she lived in Montreal. And so I basically made up a story that I have business in Montreal, And whenever I was leaving California, I would stop in Montreal on the way. Okay, a day or 2 days.
It's
or
not
a
that
weekend.
devious, is it?
It is very devious.
I mean, it's not exactly.
And
It's not mastermind criminal level devious.
Yeah, it's not evil.
It's a dad wanting to see his daughter.
But then I would book a hotel, the opposite corner of the city, okay, and say, baby, I'm here for a day and a half. If you want, I take you out to dinner or shopping or whatever, but no pressure at all, right? And then I kept doing it almost every other week for around 6 months until she started to say, why are you staying at the opposite end of town? Come over. There is a hotel 2 blocks away. Then she started to say, there is an Airbnb in my building, right? Then she started to say, there is a vacant apartment at the opposite corner.
Beautiful.
Right? And the idea was I started to basically text her in the morning and say, babe, I'm making pancakes and coffee if you want to come over, but never knock her door.
Yeah.
I mean, I was
You
20.
gave her the space.
Yeah, she was 21 at the time, or maybe late 20s. And we got closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. Now understand, very quickly, I realized the value that she was bringing with her feminine energy. But the day it hit me so hard was we were walking out of her apartment building in Montreal, and she said, Papa, do you realize that you're not fully yourself with me? I was like, what do you mean? And she said, you're not emotionally available to me. And like a typical geek, I said, I'm really sorry, I don't know the term. What does that mean? And so she laughed out loud, okay? And I had to research that as a geek. What is emotionally available, right? And it flipped my life upside down because for the first time ever, I recognized, remember, Ali left, and I didn't recognize that the masculine energy was not there. But for the first time ever, I recognized that I matured, okay? That I no longer was that 30-year-old that had to bust his ass to make money for the family, okay? And that we were doing really well and that I had another role to play, okay? And Aya telling me that must have been 2015, completely flipped the person that I am. Okay, I started to search very deeply within me around that feminine side of me, which turned out to be more powerful than my masculine side, believe it or not.
Beautiful.
I mean, not manly and you know, I'm very manly, but
I mean, you have probably the deepest voice I've ever come across.
Is that true?
You have Morgan Freeman level sort of like
we like Morgan Freeman,
like
don't we?
sort of like resonance. Is that the right word? Resonance of your voice.
Yeah,
your voice is built for a podcast.
I hate my voice.
It's honestly, you said you hate shisha. It sounds like you've having shisha your whole life. Can we do another ball, Mo? We've got 5 more to go. What's next one?
In
say?
a world of uncertainty, is happiness our default setting or our greatest rebellion? It's definitely your default setting.
In an uncertain world.
Yeah. There is nothing about the world is uncertain.
Nothing about the world's uncertain.
100%.
People living in uncertainty.
Look, if I drop this ball, it will fall on the ground. There's nothing uncertain about that. But it will fall every single time. There are laws of physics that govern this world. There are laws of probabilities that govern this world.
So the people living in Iran now, what's going to happen?
Not my words, but these are the words of people like Jeffrey Sachs and John Mersheimer and mega experts on the topic. This is a classic CIA regime change move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nothing about what's happening in Iran is unpredictable. Okay, if you have any understanding whatsoever of game theory, this was coming. Okay, now I don't want to sound unfeeling because I adore Iranian people. I have to say I am inspired by that nation so much. Okay, because they're resilient in the face of a tyrant that's been attacking them since Mossadegh, since the 1950s. Okay, with the exception of the short time when the Shah was playing along with the Western agenda. Now,
I thought you said you didn't watch news up until 2 years ago.
I do a lot of analysis. Okay. Now, here's the truth. The truth is, my heart aches so much for what's happening in the world. Okay, my heart aches for every Palestinian child that's been harmed. Okay, my heart aches for every idiot that's been lied to. My heart aches for every Iranian that's struggled. if you look back at my life, the pain of losing Ali triggered the person that I am today. So with pain comes awakening. With pain comes learning. With pain comes the person that you are.
So we go back full circle. We started about humanity and you said we are starting to wake up.
Correct.
Is that because we have been in so much pain, we're starting to wake up?
We are now suffering the pain.
The most we've ever suffered.
100%. Okay. And as
you like what I did there? I brought it back.
Yeah.
You like that?
I see what you did there, right?
From one podcaster to another.
Yeah. So the trick there is this. If I look back at my life and the most challenging experiences of my life, and if you do, and if most of our listeners do, most of the time when I tell people, I can erase it. I can take it out of space-time. It never happened. Not out of your memory, out of space-time. Would you want me to erase it knowing that it would change everything that happened as a result? And 99% of people will say no. I'll keep that bully. I'll keep that job that I lost. I'll keep that breakup.
I had a lady who came on the show. She talked about being raped when she was 16. Yeah. She was 16 years old. And I kind of indirectly asked her, and she basically said, without that, I wouldn't have become who I am, as horrific that is. She didn't say that verbatim, but it was the message that was all of those atrocities that she had to face forged, and that was the word, forged her to be who she is. I think it's true of everybody.
Yeah, and if you now think of humanity as one coherent being,
organism,
all of us, okay? We're going through that pain now, okay? And that pain, unfortunately, as unfair as it sounds, is is unequally distributed. Some of us are struggling a lot more than others.
So let's take the analogy of a doctor, right? You go to a doctor when you're in pain. Something hurts. What's the right way forward? Do we try and look to heal?
We need to find out what the reason for the...
So let's imagine the same...
We all know what the reason for the disease is. We all do. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to understand we've been colonized since 1945 with one bully that wants to run every country in the world, including now Venezuela. After the British Empire collapsed, there was always an empire. Always. Okay?
Even before the British Empire, there was always empires. Can we do another ball, Mo?
Yes. What shapes us more? The event itself or the narrative we create to make sense of it?
What shapes us more? The event itself or the narrative that we create around it?
There's no event in life.
There's no event.
I mean, the event is
You just dropped the ball. That's not an event?
Your perception of it. I didn't drop it, by the way. It fell on its own.
Well, we've got cameras. That's the one way I can prove it.
Still not good enough.
Okay.
Right? The trick is I can prove to myself I didn't drop it. I can tell myself a story in
that
my
narrative.
Yeah.
How powerful is your mind versus other people's?
Myself?
Yeah. It's like a heavyweight, right? You train your mind better than most others. 99% of the people, because of the meditation. You go 40 days. You go 40 days of a year to literally sit in silence. You listen to some music, no lyrics, and you don't speak.
Yeah,
right?
Best time of the year.
Best time. You meditate. Every Saturday you wake up, okay, and you decide up until about 2 o'clock, 2 p.m.
Every other Saturday,
and you don't want to talk. You just write down things. You clear your mind. And you sort of relieve yourself of all that negativity. It takes a very strong person to commit to that.
No.
Okay.
It's my pleasure
but that's
and joy.
I know, but you...
Does it take a very strong person to go to the gym?
No, again, because you have that strong mindset, it takes a strong person to do that, because you have to keep doing it.
I see it the opposite way. So
because you have a strong mind, that proves my point.
No, I see it the opposite way. When a lot of people tell me, but what you're doing is very difficult, okay? And I tell them, so is carrying 60 kilograms. Can you carry 60 kilograms? You probably can, but it's
if you're
not
a sumo
easy.
Wrestler, you can...
Correct. Yeah. And or if you go to the gym for the next 4 months, 4 times a week, right? 4 times a week, you go to the gym, you lift heavy, you eat properly, and so on and so forth. And what most people don't understand is that it's just like the gym. Meditation is just like the gym.
I get that.
And if you start with 2 minutes...
You increase it bit by bit. I'm with you.
Correct.
I'm
right? And I hosted on my podcast Matthew Ricard, which is by far one of the world champions in meditation, and he's a very senior Buddhist monk and great guy. And Matthew is like, he is really the world champion. And so I asked, and I said, so why did you not have he broke up with his wife when he became a monk, of course. And I said, why would you do that? And he said,
He wanted peace.
No, he said, I thought it was very unfair to her. So and he said, so because I used to go to a tiny little meter by 3 meter unheated hut on top of the mountain in the snow for 4 years at a time. 4 years at a time.
That's incredible.
And I was like, why, Matthew? And he said, I needed to find something. Every human is so capable at what they put their mind to.
Yeah.
Okay. If you put your mind to shisha, you'll be one of the best in the world at it. I have a friend of mine, I kid you not, there is a restaurant that I love that I go to once every 1 month and a half or whatever. There was not once in my life that he wasn't there smoking shisha. Every single time. And I asked him, and I said, do you do that a lot? And he said, every single day after work, I come and spend 3 hours here. He is the absolute world champion at smoking shisha for 3 hours a day.
What's his voice like?
Probably.
Sounds like yours.
Yeah, but then the question is, what did you choose to become the world champion at? If you choose to become the world champion at swiping on Instagram, you'll have bigger fingers. So you'll have smaller minds.
My dad told me when I was a kid, it's like, whatever you do in life, try and be the best of it. You want to be a dustman, be the best dustman you can be.
100%. Yeah. And understand that you cannot do everything. That unfortunately you're limited by the number of hours that you have every day. Okay?
Let's do another ball.
Does humanity need to evolve faster internally or redesign the system we live by? The system we live by is over. Your life, the way you know it, is gone. And it doesn't matter where in society you reside. Everything is about to be reset because of technology. And a little bit because of geopolitics, okay, and in a very interesting way, what really matters is how resilient are you internally to deal with those changes, right? So we're in a world today where the game of chess is over, if you think about it. So the most successful people I knew for years were people that could see 4 years ahead and say, I'm going to adjust my life for that for what's going to happen in 4 years. No more. Okay. We're now in a game of squash. Everything's going to change every 3.5 weeks. Okay. And I think that this actually is the design of the game of life. It's always been like that. But that idea of being shielded and protected and hoping that AI is not going to happen and hoping that jobs are going to be forever and hoping that, some morning some evil guy will wake up and say, okay, I'm going to stop killing everyone. Fine, I'm going to stop. That's never going to happen. Okay. And so what does that mean? It means that every one of us, has to find what we stand for, who we care about, who we love, what we're going to do with our time, what we're going to do with our abilities, what we're going to do to connect to each other. Okay. How are we going to support each other in a world that's ever changing? Okay. And how are we going to connect to us? Because that remains the only unchanged. Yeah. What serves us better, human restraint or conscious surrender?
So it's talking about. So the question was AI not regulated. Okay.
AI is not going to be regulated.
Yeah. So what will serve us better? Okay. What were the options? Just read them again.
Human restraint or conscious surrender. I don't.
So human restraint is trying to apply your values, your ethics, to try and somehow influence. When the other one was about
conscious surrender.
Yeah, letting go of that control, having that humility to realize this is the new world as it is.
Yeah, it's the latter.
And
for
we
sure.
can't be. Okay.
It's the latter for sure. So that as I said, it's a game of squash now. So what you need to understand is if the ball comes to your bottom right or the top right, you have to move to the ball and hit it back. That's it, right? But it's not a conscious surrender. I have to say, AI itself is not in any way a bad thing. Okay, intelligence is a force with no polarity. AI could actually create a utopia for all of us. And so the trick here is AI is a tool as much as it is an ally, as much as it is a threat, as much as it is a tool in the hands of the evil ones. right? And it's up to you where you position yourself with all of that. I publicly say to the world, I believe I'm borrowing 80 IQ points every day.
Yeah.
80 IQ points is very significant.
So Ray Kurzweil says that by 2029,
Yeah.
AGI will be
Yeah, I'm
with
much
us. You're
closer to
earlier.
that. Yeah.
You think it'll be next year,
I think it's
2027?
this year for
I
sure.
think it's this year.
For sure.
So what does that mean? Just make that really clear to people who don't understand AGI.
So AGI,
And Ray Kurzweil is known as, if you like, the kind of the oracle of AI, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically saying what he said, but 3 years earlier.
And he's coming earlier as well.
He listened to you.
I would probably say yes.
Yeah.
Most of them. I interviewed Jeffrey Hinton, who is wonderful and a dear colleague at Google, for my documentary, and Jeffrey as well is moving forward, and he changed his mind on a few things as well. And I will say, so AGI has no accurate definition, just like the Turing tests kept creeping and so on. But a general definition is that artificial intelligence will be better at humans in any task that humans can do. Okay. Now, any, of course, task that is non-physical, because the physical tasks are related to robotics, is a very wide definition. It's a very wide definition because there are countless tasks that human can do. The question is, how many of those tasks have we assigned to AI yet? And every task we've ever assigned to AI, they become the world champion at, right? So the question in reality is, how many more will we assign to them, right? But this is what most people don't realize. What most people don't realize is that there is a blip, a breakthrough that will change everything. That we've coded AI so far, future AI will be coded by AI. Okay, so between synthetic training data, AI teaching AI, and between self-evolving AIs that are able to redesign their own thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where the breakthrough is going to happen. Very hard to detect exactly when.
Yeah.
It could happen literally in the next 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Or in the next 4 years.
I mean, look, we're already giving AI huge amounts of data. Every single one of us, we're giving them everything.
Yeah.
And it's all open. There's no barriers. There's no restrictions or limitations. And the dangers that come with that, Mo, I've got a 4-year-old boy and I've got a 2-year-old. I have no idea what the world is going to look like by the time that they are teenagers, and how they're going to be using AI and how much AI will be implanted within them potentially. I don't know. And we are at the very, very beginning of a huge shift.
It's the biggest shift in human history.
And I'm terrified of it. I'm terrified because we're at the very beginning, and the amount of change that we've seen in just 18 months, 24 months.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with artificial intelligence.
No, I agree with you, but it's about how we use it, how we apply it.
And that to me is a human problem.
But look how the world is. That's why I'm terrified, because look at the world, Mo. It's burning. It's burning everywhere.
No,
you've got massive issues in Africa. Okay, some are humanitarian, some are political. Mm-hmm. You've got huge issues now with the North America and the South America divide and what's happening with the Trump administration. Europe hasn't had a strong economy in the last God knows how long. You've got Iran on the brink of is on a civil war. You've still got the ongoing conflict. So
Iran will be fine.
There is. It's not like, and I don't know that much about the other parts of the world, but what I would say is that the world isn't exactly what you call a safe place right now. It's not exactly booming. People aren't living in harmony. You throw AI on that, for me, it's like napalm. That's what terrifies me.
Correct. What are you going to do about it?
All I can do is control what I can control.
Which is?
Which is how I use AI and how I apply it to my life and how I teach my children.
That's great. That's a great start. Okay? That's a great start. Now, my theory is very straightforward. Okay? My theory is that if we leave AI up to humanity, unfortunately, non-specific to AI, it also applies to nuclear power, for example. Once we gave humanity nuclear power, instead of using it as the most valuable, most abundant, clean energy source that we could find, we used it to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay, that's sadly there are not too many people in the world that are purely evil, but there are enough of them to create so much damage and to, basically capture all of the headline news.
But who is in power is the greed. Greed is what it's like one of the common...
No, evil is in power, not greed.
Okay, but the people in power can also be evil and greedy. And they can
Greed and fear and all of the negatives are the methods of evil. Evil is in power, okay? And evil is attempting to prove simply that we humans are not worthy, okay? That there is a very, very, very limited number of humans that are worthy, and the rest should become slaves. Now, as long as humans go that way, unfortunately, you're going to see a dystopia before you see a utopia, okay? This is within our hands. We can insist that humanity doesn't go that way.
So that pain that we talked about is going to intensify before it gets better.
Unless we insist that this doesn't happen. So there are examples of mad map, what I call mutually assured destruction versus mutually assured prosperity. Okay, so the CERN particle accelerator is a project where the whole world collaborates for the benefit of humanity because there is mutually assured prosperity. If this succeeds, everything is amazing, right? A nuclear treaty is because of mutually assured destruction. Okay,
yes.
We have both with AI. We know both, and we know that if we collaborate, we can create a utopia for everyone. We know that if we continue to create this arms race and care less about humanity and care more about greed and so on, like you said, that this is going to create a dystopia. Having said that, there is likely going to be a moment in human history, whether in 3 years' time or in 5 years' time, where if we don't follow map, we're going to have to be following mad, because suddenly everyone will realize this is not going right. Yeah. Either way, believe it or not, what will end up happening is there is a point in time where something I call the fourth inevitable will happen. And the fourth inevitable is that every AI we build in the arms race will be deployed. So if you're trying to beat the other guy, by definition, every time you have a better AI than the other guy, you're going to deploy it. Okay, so either the other guy is also going to deploy their equivalent, or they're going to become irrelevant.
It's a new arms race.
Right. And as a result of that basically means that within the next 4 to 6 years, most important decisions in the world will be handed over to AI. When that happens, it's not the end of humanity, it's humanity's salvation. Because then, for the first time ever, we take the stupid, greedy leaders out of the equation and we hand over to a new leader, that is by definition more intelligent than all of us.
Yeah.
Okay? That new leader, a super intelligence, is, through the laws of physics, altruistic. So the more intelligent you become, the more you follow what in nature is known as the minimum energy principle. The reason why proteins are folded in certain ways in your body is because of the minimum energy principle, because this is the least waste. For that protein to look that way is the least energy waste.
It's efficiency.
It's the most efficient.
It's nature, human nature.
And so wars are not efficient. Greed is not efficient. Evil in general is not very efficient. It harms a lot of people. It harbors a lot of hate. It creates a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so we're talking about one of two things. Either humanity engages and we skip the dystopia, okay, and go directly to a utopia, or humanity doesn't engage, so the evil of us use the discriminative distribution of power in their favor for a while until AI is in power, and then we're in the utopia anyway. Yeah. Okay. Either way, we will end up, because of artificial intelligence, in a place that's better than where we are today. It's just a question of how much pain do we take on the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. So final ball, talking about efficiency.
What scares you more, AI mirroring our worst impulses, or humanity unwilling to evolve?
Isn't that a great segue based on what we talked about? Come on, Mo. You picked them out. I didn't.
Did you watch this podcast before?
But isn't that nice how we managed to sort of...
Yeah, the questions are really almost building on what I said. I definitely think that AI mirroring us is the worst. So what you said is also true. Humanity's never been, we're not in a good shape. But interestingly, AI could also mirror our best. Understand that. What that means is that if you really ask yourself how many people that you know are actually evil, the majority of humanity is not. So if you really think about it, there might be 2 million evil people in the world. 2 million can create a lot of havoc. Okay?
Especially if they wield the power.
And of course, they do invest their effort and time and money to wield the power, right? So that makes them even more lethal. But the truth is, if AI was to mimic humanity, most of us love our kids, most of us love our friends, most of us want a hug, most of us are wonderful people. You know, the problem is two things. One is very few evil people are in power. And unfortunately, the news, whether mainstream media or social media, is capturing their moves.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you really look at last night, there will be an article in the newspaper that says a woman, slaughtered her husband. There will not be, at least 2 billion other articles that says a woman cooked dinner or, hugged her husband. Or
also, the woman that slaughtered the husband, you don't know the context of why that happened as well.
Either way, is it evil or not? There is a negativity bias in the way we look at the world, right? Yeah. The humanity by definition is divine. A species that's capable of love by definition is divine.
Reason, love and reason.
Well, I don't know about reason, to be honest.
Yeah, we have reason. Come on, we have reason.
I mean, anyway.
We're not animals. We have reason. William Blake famously said that we're born innocent, into a world of innocence. It's only experience thrust upon us that makes us feel a bit more evil,
which makes us unreasonable.
But there is reason. There is reason there because we can fathom cause and effect of something, right? Yeah. There is, you know what I mean? Mo, it's been awesome. I have one last ball for you. It's blank. There's nothing on it. Now. You're 58 years old.
Yeah.
You continue to have a hell of a life. What I would love to end the show is that one insight, that final insight, looking at everything that you've seen, heard, spoken with, experienced. What is that one insight that you think is really worthy of sharing to everybody who's watching?
Can I use my safe word? You see, I'm using your program against you. I'm very grateful for the time that you put here today. You gave me here today. I think the insight is to reflect and learn. Basically, I think everyone is different, and I think in this world that we live in today, it's so confusing that you should never believe me or you or anyone. Everyone needs to start learning for themselves about what makes them the person that they want to become. It's a fast-changing world, I think, in every possible way. We started by thinking that it's going to be difficult. Difficult is good. Difficult is when you become the best person that you can be.
It hasn't been difficult. This has been a very easy conversation.
Thank you.
Mo, you've we talked about happiness exceeding your expectations. Well, you definitely exceeded mine. It's been a real pleasure. I know why people talk about you positively as the way they do. I look forward to the next book, Propaganda. It's called Propaganda, potentially.
Let's skip the next one that I wrote already. Yes, the next one is Propaganda. Yeah.
I wish you all the very best for your future, for your present, because we don't believe in the future, we believe in the present, right? You see, I'm learning. There is no time, space. You see?
There's no space.
I'm listening. Yes,
there you
go. But I wish you all the very best, my friend, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you so much.
Guys, if you've liked this episode, please do what you do best. Drop a like, drop a comment. I don't know, say something nice, because it's nice to be nice, right? Isn't it nice to be nice,
Say
Mo?
something nice or we will not read it.
It's good to, exactly, on that note. And of course, try and subscribe if you haven't already. See you very soon on Luca's Inside Track. This episode was sponsored by Maxam.